So, this is a reading of an essay from the book called The Humane Hoax: Essays Exposing the Myth of Happy Meat, Humane Dairy, and Ethical Eggs, edited by Hope Bohannock. This is the sixth essay entitled How Colonization Helped to Normalize the Humane Hoax by Christopher Soule Eubanks. Many first-time mothers become flowered with unconditional love when they look into the eyes of their newborns. Their hearts race as they feel an unexpected layer of emotion added to their existence that they didn't realize they were capable of developing. These thoughts and feelings rush through new mothers every day. Mother cows feel the same intense bond with their babies, but for cows used in dairy production, these precious moments are quickly ravaged by grief and turmoil as their newborn calves are torn from them, the males to be killed just a few months later, the females to be raised, repeatedly impregnated to produce milk. The mother cow's cries and obvious psychological distress is the only language needed to know what she is experiencing. This crime against compassion is only one example of the cruelty of the humane hoax that's been ingrained into our civilization after millennia of abusing animals and was hyperinflative after the native people of America were decimated by colonization. Colonization is defined as the action or process of settling among and establishing control over the indigenous people of an area. Animal abuse and oppression existed long before colonization, but the mass scale of violence and exploitation towards black, brown, and indigenous people that occurred during the colonization of the American continents and numerous other indigenous lands has shaped much of our modern culture. For centuries, these systemic tools of oppression have made mass violence and large-scale slavery a significant part of world culture that is still poisoning numerous aspects of our social as well as physical world. Operating under these normalized systems of violence has spearheaded high crime rates, mass incarceration, and military-like weaponry into U.S. culture that has desensitized many of us to the violent psychology that permeates our world. When black, brown, and indigenous people were stripped of their culture and heritage, they were terrorized by their oppressors into accepting new cultural norms to the detriment of their own existence. This psychological warfare consisted of separating fair-skinned slaves from darker-skinned slaves, fueling colorism, feeding slaves undesirable animal remains such as pigs' feet, ears, and intestines, and forcing the mass consumption of cow secretions, dairy, into their diets. Over the course of generations, some of these oppressive processes have been passed down to future generations of people of color, which has allowed animal agriculture to prey even more on vulnerable people in these marginalized communities. This systemic oppression is a part of the fabric that takes place to uphold the humane hoax. The normalization of sexual abuse, slavery, genocide, and mass oppression towards entire groups has allowed our society to accept the unjust systems that uphold them as routine and commonplace in our world. Not only have we become victims of this discrimination, we have also been conditioned to participate in the perpetuation of these abusive practices towards our fellow humans as well as non-human animals. Humans have never been the biggest or strongest of species, but we were able to use our unique cognitive capacity as an advantage to dominate other animals. During ancient times, various survival tactics were essential to humanity's well-being, but today, many of those same tactics are shunned, outlawed, and shamed. We have used our unique intellect to blur the lines between survival and cruelty, allowing us to cause unnecessary harm to trillions of non-human animals every year. While early humans hunted and wore the fur and skin of animals for survival, We have used our ancestors' circumstances to justify our use of animals for food and clothing, animal testing, and a variety of unnecessary forms of abuse of non-human animals. This hoax has led to us exploiting animals across the globe for entertainment, fashion, and various unethical and unnecessary reasons. The humane hoax is a lie that allows our society to believe that unnecessary killing can be done in an ethical manner. We have been predisposed to violence towards non-human animals so much that most of our culture assumes this violence is necessary for our survival. Many people not only don't question violence inflicted on non-human animals, but they also don't question if non-human animals deserve autonomy over their own bodies and the basic rights of personhood. The perpetrators of this oppression have been covered not only by years of normalized violence, but also trillions of dollars of marketing, social programming, and conditioning. Capitalism, which is a product of colonialism, has also fueled the humane hoax by using profit as a way to exacerbate the oppression of non-human animals. Non-human animals were exploited long before capitalism, but capitalism, under the umbrella of colonialism, has made it easily digestible to consume the lies of animal agriculture. This emotional warfare on the spirit of our collective consciousness helps our society to ignore the layers of nuance that exist when we attempt to extend our compassion beyond humans. It also permeates how people from the dominant group often address human rights issues. When people say all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter, they are discounting the particular ways systemic oppression has targeted Black people and also people of the global majority. Carelessly grouping everyone into the same crowd and ignoring nuance is a dangerous ideology and toxic framework that allows us to believe that deceptions like humane slaughter are possible. Overlooking these layers of nuance creates gateways towards paths of thinking that allow us to accept the mass oppression of non-human animals and justify cruelty towards them. Not only has this impacted how those from the dominant socioeconomic class view these issues, but it also impacts how marginalized groups unknowingly carry out oppressive thinking towards other oppressed groups. Sometimes members of oppressed groups unintentionally resent other oppressed groups because they often feel they are in competition with them for society's compassion. Some people from marginalized groups feel that non-human animals get the understanding and sympathy for their oppression that we as marginalized people deserve. In the television show Woke, the main character Keith has a traumatic encounter with the police and spends most of the season suppressing his anxiety from the encounter while also feeling unacknowledged by his peers and society at large around his trauma. His emotions erupt later in the season in an episode that centers around a koala named Kubi, who is killed after escaping from the local zoo. Keith lashes out at a crowd of people attending a candlelight vigil for Kubi because he interprets their compassion for Kubi as ignoring the police brutality and oppression that he, and to a larger extent Black people, experience daily. After his meltdown, Keith realizes his actions were a combination of him not addressing his trauma and sees how his anger was misdirected towards those grieving for Kubi. While some people who advocate for non-human animals do lack empathy for human rights issues, those two aren't automatically mutually exclusive. Our compassion should be consistent for all oppressed beings experiencing mass exploitation, violence, and oppression. But the more we allow humane hoaxes to persist, the more oxygen they will create for other oppressions to breathe. What allows discrimination and oppression to thrive is the idea that others are separate from us. When we are able to disassociate from others, be they human or non-human animals, this can lead to the justification of mistreatment towards them. We have an endless number of labels that have been immorally used to pit us against others and hide the truth. Others are just a different version of ourselves existing in different bodies who want to live and to live free of suffering. In order for us to combat the humane hoax, we are going to have to analyze how this hoax impacts not only non-human animals, but also our entire society. We will have to examine its poisonous roots and how it also permeates our activist communities. As the humane hoax has been passed down from generation to generation, the suffering it creates is also passed down, be it through normalized toxic behavior or the victims that suffer at the hands of this violence. As long as we allow poisonous ideologies like the humane hoax to exist, it will not only prevent the liberation of non-human animals, but it will also prevent humanity from achieving true collective liberation for all.